and I don't see usually I don't see the point in doing long flights like this, but the fancy kind of tickled me a little bit, and I thought, you know what, if you do you know, a long flight like this, obviously you're gonna fly like it's gonna be a bit of a ghost stream, and when you leave the stream run by itself, there's not gonna be anybody watching. That's totally understandable, because you know, there's no point watching when the streamer is not even there. So, but I thought, yeah, let's do that. You know, let's do the long stream. We'll get the stream running for the whole time, and then I'll come back like a couple of hours before the arrival and finish off the stream. At least, you know, we've got the whole thing kind of running. Oh, the center points, I was thinking about them. They switch themselves off. That's really good as well. And to test also, you know, the automatic step climb, to see if the fuel pumps there would switch themselves off, you know, when the fuel in the center tank goes, and which has been the case. So that's very good. So the aircraft is configured for like what do you make on it? For like long haul flight. The computer has been holding on. It's not too warm. So yeah, it's totally feasible, and I'm not gonna do that every day, but in the future I might be inclined to do longer flights like this as well. We'll see how it goes. But the only thing is that at the moment here, because the aircraft thinks that it's going to be more beneficial to go to a 360, it already wants to step to a 36. But the max is 363, so it's a little bit tight. Personally, I don't like to go up when it's that tight. I like to have at least, you know, 500 feet at the very, very least, if not more than that. In real, there's two ways of doing it. Either you do it in VNAV, so you will set 360 here and press the altitude intervention button. That would update the level here in the FMC to 36, and the aircraft would climb full blast. But for example, if it's a long flight and you have you know, like some of the crew in the bunk and stuff, like when you start like putting full thrust to climb, it makes quite a lot of noise for the folks in the crew rest compartment. So you can initially just go like 360, go vertical speed and climb maybe at 500 feet. So there's not a lot of extra thrust added to start the climb, and it makes a little bit less noise for the crew in the crew rest compartment. Because you do hear when thrust is added, you do hear it in the bunk, definitely. Even if you well, if you've got maybe earplugs, not so much, but if you don't put earplugs, then you'll definitely hear the you know, the increase in thrust. Yeah, Mermoz, it's true. I mean, I did a stream, I think it was last week, from New York to London, and we kind of talked a little bit about, like, you know, crossing the Atlantic. It's difficult to make it relevant, because there's a lot of it nowadays in these aircraft has to do with CPDLC and ADS and all these things, HF, cell call and all that stuff. But none of it really is simulated here. CPDLC will be in the ATC menu here, and obviously this is not simulated, so it's difficult to kind of explain a little bit what it's like. The manager, yeah, none of this is simulated, unfortunately, so it's difficult to kind of explain a little bit what it's like. HF is simulated here. You can play around, but these would be only really the frequencies, but you don't get also, like, you know, the HF sounds and the cell call as well. Although I've got like on my mobile phone, I've got like that cell call app, which actually produces the cell call tones, you know, they use to call the aircraft, and you can actually hear the different tones according to your cell call code. So that's quite interesting, but it's a bit of a sterile environment to explain the procedures, you know, if you can't show as well how, you know, how it works. Today on this flight, actually, there's not much of oceanic procedure, because we are from Melbourne. It was kind of crossing Australia, more or less south to north, and then going towards Indonesia, which is mostly domestic airspace, really, and then going towards Singapore and Malaysia, and then cross the Bay of Bengal towards India, and then cross the Arabian Sea to the Middle East. So it's there's not much in terms of proper oceanic procedure. I mean, there's obviously like a couple of quite large chunks of water to cross, but nothing like oceanic, like in the Atlantic Ocean, either North or South Atlantic, or even like the Indian Ocean, when if you go down to Australia and you're kind of really in the middle of nowhere for like 8 hours or something, where there's not actually any specific procedures, but you can, for example, do block cruise levels and stuff like that. So but on this particular flight and on this particular routing, there was nothing like that really. Yeah, so I don't know what you think about these long flights, if it's worth doing these long flights, or if we may just as well do like only 2-3 hour flights and just call it a day. I'm not sure. I mean, I perfectly understand that for you guys to watch the whole thing is not an option, since it's not an option for me to be streaming the whole way as well, and be behind the stream the whole way. So that I can perfectly understand, but personally, I mean, it doesn't bother me, you know, running the stream for all that time. I mean, the computer has been holding on, and is not overly hot. It's now been running for like 12 hours, so it's okay. So I'm not saying I'm gonna do that like every day now, but I was curious to see how it would work out, and yeah, I'm quite happy with the way it worked out so far. It's been okay. Hey, Norwegian pilot, how are you doing? So yeah, if you guys think it's something that can be done in the future as well, then maybe I'll look into it again. If you think it's too much, then so be it. 737 forever, yeah. 737 is a beautiful aircraft. It's a dinosaur that's been reincarnated many times. Because from the old like 200, for example, it's not changed that much. The overhead panel in particular is evolved a little bit, but you can see like the kind of backbone of the old 737, even in 737 NG, like the 800, for example. So yeah, it's an aircraft that's been reinvented many times, but it's still like a great aircraft. I do prefer the 777 because it's I think it's a little bit more user friendly, and it's you know, it's more like, it's a little bit more advanced, like technologically speaking and stuff, but like, you know, with the fly-by-wire and the whole ICAS and the electronic checklist, it's very user friendly. It does work really well. But the 737, I have to say, is a really good aircraft. It does fly very well, and it's much more hands-on. Many more things to do, like on the overhead panel, for example. Here, if something is left the light on here. Here, if like something is not properly configured, they will come up on the ICAS. It will give you a warning. Whereas on the 737, for example, if the packs are off, you're not going to get any warning. Here, if you switch the left pack off, straight away you're gonna get the ICAS message here, whereas like on the 737 it's not gonna show. So if both packs are like switched off on the 737, then you're gonna take off, climb, and at 10,000 feet you're gonna get the toot, toot, toot. You're gonna get the altitude warning, or maybe not straight away at 10,000 feet, but pretty much soon after that. So that's why for me it's more hands-on. There's more like there's a more thorough checklist to be done, more like a more thorough setup than on the 777. On the 777, for example, on the overhead panel, there's actually not much to do initially because the aircraft stays in the same state regardless of the stages of the flight. So during the pre-flight, I mean, the one thing maybe is the ADIRU, put the emergency lights on, and the hydraulics will be switched off, so you wouldn't really touch that anyway. The fuel pumps will be switched off. You wouldn't touch them until you pressurize just before like engine start, and like configure the hydraulics and the fuel. But the rest will be pretty much in place already. You know, the tach switch will be on, the battery, all these switches will be on already. This would be on and stays on all the time. These switches, they don't really move except when you start the engines. This will be in place, you don't really touch that anyway. You can't jettison fuel on the ground because it's dependent on the air-ground logic of the aircraft. So if the aircraft senses that it's on the ground, it prohibits, you know, any fuel jettisoning, so that you don't piss fuel out of the wings, basically, if you pardon my French. The anti-ice also stays all the time on the auto position on the ground, so you don't really touch that. And all these switches up here, the equip cooling, the reserve fans, the gasper, the trim air, and all the bleed switches there, they stay on the auto position as well on the ground. So actually there's not much to do. Whereas like on the 737 there's much more to be done. Air Killer, bonjour. Yeah, true. It would get close to the I'll put the left backpack on. You can actually it's no problem to fly with one pack on, two packs off, or two packs like US is no good news because you're gonna slowly depressurize, but one pack is okay. It can be switched off in flight, no problem. Not that you would switch it off in flight, of course, but here for the stream it's no problem. I don't know if you guys remember, like I think it was on the 737 trying to explain a little bit what happened with that Helios flight. and finishing the whole flight depressurized at 36,000 feet. That was funny. I couldn't reset the failure, and well, flying at 36,000 feet, totally depressurized. That was fun. Still the same time for same type for the Max, yeah. Yeah, the Max uses now some of the newer like Boeing technology, like these composite materials, these new winglets, new engines, which I believe are more efficient. Probably the weight of the aircraft has been decreased, things like that. So it's a good aircraft. It's picking up on the the 787 technologies, and the new 777 as well will be going in that direction, I understand. So it's gonna be interesting. Okay, TUI 737 pilot. One of your friends is Lufthansa FO on the 320. Nice. And Lufthansa, they have a nice life. Yeah, they've got to keep as much as possible, at least, the flight deck like identical to the older 737 models, yeah, to kind of keep the commonality between the different variants. Otherwise, yeah, then you need new type ratings. So. Oh yeah, but it's true, as I said, it's an aircraft that's been reinvented like many times, but you can still see where it comes from, yeah. Yeah, you get just maybe under 200 people from A to B on relatively short routes. And yeah, it does the job it's designed to do, definitely. Because ETOPS basically looks at three things. ETOPS looks at, well, allows you to go beyond 1 hour from an adequate airport. On a twin-engine aircraft, and it allows you to go beyond that 1 hour like flight time, based on basically the reliability of the engines. And the ETOPS looks at three cases. It looks at first like an engine failure on the cruise, once obviously like you're beyond the 60 minutes from an adequate airport. So we look at the engine failure case, it would look at a depressurization case, and it would look at a simultaneous, or more or less at least close together, depressurization and engine failure. So that's the three cases it looks at. And yeah, I tried to work side a plan. Actually, like depressurization then obviously like involves going down to 10,000 feet, and from 10,000 feet kind of cruising along to obviously divert somewhere. That is maybe not as critical as flying on one engine, because, well, if you depressurize and you still have two engines, then you're kind of instead of cruising at, well, after the initial like dramatic event, of course, then instead of cruising at 35,000 feet or something, you're cruising at 10,000 feet. So flying wise, it's maybe not like a big deal, but flying on one engine, like far away from anything, is to me sounds more like a big deal. So that's really the main thing. But But ETOPS in itself, that's the way I personally understand it, is it's not so much you know, a guarantee that the aircraft is gonna fly on one engine for like up to 207 minutes, for example, which is what the 300ER with the GE engines is certified. It's just like a certification thing, you know. It's because there's been so many flight hours, and it's, you know, a kind of reliability indication that, yeah, the aircraft, you can take the aircraft far away from anything, and you're gonna keep your two engines running, and it's not gonna be a problem. I think it's more like a reliability thing on for the engines, rather than the capability of the aircraft to fly on one engine for like 207 minutes. 207 minutes is actually a long time, and you have to bear in mind as well that if you really like diverting to 207 minutes, this is like in still air conditions, so you could the diversion time could be longer than the 3 hours and 27 minutes. You could have a diversion time of like 4 hours or something if there's a headwind component on your diversion. So I wouldn't really be excited at the prospect of flying on one engine for like 4 hours. But I think, as I said, that's because, well, they say that the chances of having an engine problem is now, after like so many flight hours, nothing has happened. So they think the engines are like 99.9999999% reliable. So they say, yeah, you can go like, you know, quite far away from anything and nothing will happen. And if something happens, then the chances that the second engine quits are even less, even more like remote. So you can basically do it, but there's no guarantee that if you are flying on one engine, then it's gonna be able to, you know, to hack it basically. So it's, yeah, it's more like a certification and a reliability thing. Right, we left India behind now. We are the Arabian Sea. And ETA in an hour and 50 minutes. Now I guess we're gonna go up to 3.6. So we go 3.6 and hit altitude intervention. As I said previously, it changes the cruise altitude here to fly level 360, and then we go full thrust to climb and start the climb. Yeah, I hope everything is gonna work out for the employees. It's always sad, you know. It's always sad when things like that happen. Yeah, that's correct. G1D 54. We're going to for Aviator Chuck Meet 16. We're going to Dubai.
feet to level off.
And the F4 is still awake. FS2 crew is still active there in the background. Beautiful. After like 11.5 hours of flying. Fantastic. Because at the end of the day, it's all down to you know, it's all down to price. And when low fares like carriers can have like tickets for like half the price of other carriers, I mean, people are not gonna look twice to choose, you know, which one they're gonna fly with. and everything is kind of driven by price. People are not really looking at you know, the quality of service anymore. Because to tell the truth, like, you know, for example, on the European market, you know, most flights will be like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. You're not gonna get that much difference in terms of service. And I've been like sitting like in premium classes and on KLM, on Lufthansa and British Airways, for example, and yeah, obviously it's a little bit nicer. I don't want to sound like you know, I'm not grateful, but the service is obviously a little bit better if you're like, for example, sitting like in a premium class on Lufthansa, like, you know, the European on European flights, like with, yeah, Lufthansa, KLM, British Airways. You'll be a little bit more comfortable and stuff. But if you have to pay like 10 times the price of a ticket on Ryanair or EasyJet, you know, a lot of people are gonna say, well, no, Sodda, you know, we'll fly Ryanair or EasyJet, pay like 10 times less. Maybe it'll be a little bit less comfortable. Maybe you have to buy the food, but on board, but at the same time it's still gonna be as expensive as those carriers, you know. So yeah, for me it's all down to price, you know. The quality of service doesn't really, at the end of the day, I don't think enters into the equation for a lot of people. I think people will kind of sacrifice a little bit, you know, the quality of service for the price. And yeah, there's nothing you can do but that. No, the safety. I don't think the safety like is compromised in places like Ryanair or EasyJet. I don't think the safety is compromised, to tell the truth. I don't think that is the case. Training wise and stuff, those guys are like, you know, are really well trained. I wouldn't say that safety is compromised. I think it's just the economics they work, you know. Vadim, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. I think it's just their like economic model is more efficient than those other airlines. You've got they've got different way of doing business. They'll you know, they'll save at every level. They try to squeeze as much as they can, and sometimes it's a little bit dodgy. Not safety wise, but just the way that, you know, they work out the system with maybe like tax and things like that, and the way they do their accounts and stuff. But their like economic model is much more efficient than, you know, the mainline companies, that's for sure. Yeah, aviation is still awesome, of course. I mean, you go on a 747 or you go on a, you know, on a 777 or now on the 350. The other day there's like a few 350s around where I was, and it's amazing aircraft actually. When you look at it, it's really impressive. It looks really great. So yeah, it's still great. It's just that, you know, things you are mentioning like back in maybe in the 60s, 70s, things are kind of moved from there, because at the time it was a little bit more of aviation was maybe more for like an elite, and it was I like to use that word glamour. It was more like, you know, cool and Panam, and you've got like you know, the film Catch Me If You Can, and, you know, like all the, yeah, all that kind of glamour side. But this all that stuff is now over, you know. Aviation is now like more more affordable, it's more popular. It's kind of, it became accessible to the masses, and it's also now run by the bin counters who try to make, you know, as much money as possible, and make it as economically viable and profitable as possible. So the game has changed. That's for sure. Donkey Fist. What was the article on Flight Global? I was not aware of it. What is it about? Yeah, it's a good film, isn't it? No problem, Inchwind 54. It's a good film. Ah, 90s arcade fighter. How are you doing? Yeah, it's amazing aircraft, Concorde. Very small inside, actually. It's, you don't realize when you yeah, you don't realize when you're when you look at it from outside and you think about it, you say, oh man, it's yeah, you don't realize the size, but it's very small inside. Very, very small. If I remember well, it's 2 and 2, huh? So it's it was obviously like some sort of like first class service, but first class without like the actual first class like seats like you have nowadays on all those airlines, where you've got like those fancy seats and you can kind of recline the seat and do all that stuff. You've got like all those fancy premium seats. It was not the case. It was almost like being in economy. Obviously the service itself was really good. The food, like, you know, the service on board was like obviously top notch. They were serving like, you know, champagne, caviar and all that stuff. It was all fancy, but the seats themselves were like economy class like seats. Obviously the flight was not too long to cross the Atlantic. They were crossing the Atlantic in just over like 3 hours or something, so it was not as if you needed to you know, be able to recline your seat and sleep and all that stuff. It was a quick flight, but yeah, the seats themselves were not fancy at all. But the service, yeah, you know, the service on board was top notch, and obviously the price of the ticket was very expensive. It's a shame that an aircraft like this has not been, well, that it's been kind of put into a museum, and that Concorde, or like the French-British like alliance, like the you know, the company that put the Concorde together, didn't try really to improve on it. And Dr. ToYou99, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's a shame they've not tried. You know, we were talking about like revamping the 737. It's a shame they didn't try to you know, to revamp the Concorde. You know, that would have been good. But once again, it's all down to economics. You know, nowadays, you know, they think, well, the aircraft is not economically viable, but technologically speaking, it's a shame that it's not there anymore, because now it's a bit of a step, you know, it's a bit of a step back. We had this Mark II aircraft, you know, flying twice the speed of sound, and now we're back down to you know, Mach decimal 85, or well, when we had, you know, Mach II, you know, it's a shame. It's a bit of a step back. So I don't know if like aircraft manufacturers are working on is it I'm not really sure how you call that. Is it ultrasonic or whatever? Like an aircraft that flies like beyond the speed of sound, but yeah, it's a shame. How do you keep awake during the cruise? If it's daytime, it's a little bit easier than at nighttime. At nighttime, we are allowed to do what we call a controlled rest. So one guy is flying the aircraft, and the other one is a little bit like snoozing on the seat. Yeah, the main thing is kind of, you know, if it's during the day, it's not too bad to stay awake. Thank you for the follow, to Ratuk. Yeah, it's not too difficult to stay awake, because, well, you slept and you're kind of fresh. You keep yourself busy, yeah, doing the fuel checks, like, you know, doing the radio, kind of following a little bit the progress of the flight, checking the weather along the route to make sure if there's a problem. Burke, thank you very much for the follow. Yeah, if there's a problem, you can go somewhere and all that stuff. Then what else? Obviously, from time to time, you need a physiological break. So that will kind of, you go, you know, stretch your leg. After the physiological break, you can go speak to the crew in the galley for maybe 5 minutes or something, just to you know, get the blood flowing in your body. Because like staying like sitting like this for hours and hours is takes its toll a little bit. Yeah, have a chat with the colleague. Sometimes the crew come and visit as well, and you can have a chat with the crew. So time flies, yeah. Daniel Mills 98, thank you for the follow. Strangely enough, time flies on those long flights, and your body kind of slows down, and you can it's difficult to explain, but you kind of get into that kind of, I wouldn't say it's a trance, but yeah, your body clock kind of slows down a little bit, and you know, you're kind of settled down, and then you're gonna have maybe also at some point something to eat, maybe then a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and you kind of just go with the flow, and you don't really think in terms of time anymore so much. And then yeah, and then it's time to you know, start preparing the approach and the landing, and you're there. So yeah, we're not really supposed to you know, to watch, for example, no problem, TUI 737 pilot. You're not supposed to. We can't really like use like tablets or like iPads to watch like movies or something like that. We're not really supposed to do that. But you can read, like, you know, you can read a book. You can read like a magazine or newspapers. That's kind of allowed, because even the crew would provide the newspapers. So yeah, you can do those things as well. If the colleague is quite chatty and you've got, like, you know, common grounds, then that's a good thing. You know, you can chat away, and time flies much quicker like this as well. You know, if you get on well with your colleague, and or as I said, when like a crew member like comes on and you've got like things to say, then it's good. How long until landing? About an hour and a half now. Even under an hour and a half, I would say maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Well, let's look at the ETA. I think I'll yeah, half past, so an hour and 20 minutes. But the arrival, I think the arrival there is always a bit of a long winded arrival, but I know I don't have the arrival, but we'll do a straight in anyway. So yeah, an hour and 20 minutes roughly. No problem, my PPL. See you soon. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Have a nice day. See you around. And Langut, it's P3D version 4. Yeah, the pilot reading his newspaper with coffee on the side. Yeah. Yeah, to tell the truth, I mean, once you're in the cruise, you know, you've got the autopilot engaged. I mean, the aircraft will fly. I mean, there are times when, and don't be scared by what I'm gonna say, but there are times we don't even look at what the aircraft is doing, you know, and the aircraft is still flying. And I kind of, personally, that's a personal thing, but I kind of like to keep an eye, you know, even if you're like engaged in a chat or something, you know, from time to time I would just like, you know, take a quick glance to see like everything is still, you know. But in all that time, I mean, the autopilot has never disconnected, and if the autopilot was disconnecting or anything, you know, you will get like you will get an alarm or something. There's like a sound, so you will get this, you know, if the autopilot was to disconnect. So, and that would grab your attention. So yeah, there are times when we don't even like, you know, monitor what's going on. So and even if the autopilot, you know, disconnects, because the aircraft is in trim, and you know, it's not as if with the autopilot disconnected now, the you know, the aircraft is falling off the sky. You know, the aircraft is still flying and is pretty much in trim and stable, and unless there's a bit of turbulence, and then that would obviously change your, maybe like, you know, create a few bumps and maybe you will climb. Or now it's starting to climb a little bit, but yeah, the aircraft is stable in the cruise, so it took like 30 seconds to climb like maybe 40 feet, which would be maybe realistic, I don't know. But welcome to the stream. Yeah, and the number of NDBs in the world is slowly, you know, is slowly decreasing, and there will come a time when there won't be any NDBs anymore. No, to tell the truth, I mean, on some of the 777s, the ADF function here on the FS panel is now US. It's been kind of disabled, so we don't really fly like NDB approaches. And if there was only an NDB approach, we could like theoretically fly the NDB approach without, you know, receiving the actual NDB, you know, because as I said, the ADF function here is disabled, so we can't display the NDB needle on the navigation display. And if you go to the NavRad as well, you can't tune in the ADF, you can't tune in the NDB in the NavRad page. So if the place you were flying to only had an NDB approach, then you would fly it with the LNAV, VNAV, like, so therefore like relying on the FMC, GPS and all that stuff. So yeah, ADF is slowly becoming a thing of the past. VORs are still pretty much going on. It's still like a fairly common radio navigation aid, and in some airports they use it like as a backup to the ILS. For example, if the ILS is US is not working, then you could do a VOR approach, and if there's a VOR like nearby to allow for an approach there using the VOR. But nowadays also a lot of airports have these RNAV approaches. So if the primary type of approach is the ILS, but if the ILS is not working also for some reason, then the backup instead of a VOR approach will be a RNAV approach. So yeah. Slowly, all these old radio navigation aids are becoming a thing of the past. NDBs like more quickly than VORs, but slowly it's kind of disappearing. And en route, I mean, nowadays all the airways are like RNAV based. They are like based on waypoints which are like defined by latitudes and longitudes and stuff, and it's all flown by GPS. And so we're now flying like the airways following VORs to VORs. There are very few airways left which are based on VORs, and approaches as well. A lot of them nowadays are based on RNAV, basically on RNAV waypoints, on like fictitious points, once again, defined by latitude, longitudes, to which they give like a name, a 5-letter name. And yeah, everything is flown by GPS. We don't really fly radio navigation aids anymore, really. This is all a thing of the past. So in a sense, yeah, we are a bit over relying on computers to fly the aircraft. The hands flying is kind of suffering a little bit, because we certainly rely on automatics a little bit too much. Yeah, that's true. Oh, you were just kidding. Okay. Hello, Bill. How are you doing? Welcome to the stream today. You won't believe it, but the stream has been going on for, well, we've been airborne now for 12 hours and 16 minutes, and obviously there was a bit of flight preparation, so the stream has been going on probably for 13 hours already. Believe it or not, very unusual, but I thought I would fancy the idea, and I thought I would try to do a long flight like this. But out of the 12 hours and 16 minutes now, I've been sleeping for about 9, so I'll reassure you, I've not been sitting behind the stream for like all that time. It was good to see the auto step climb function on the aircraft. It works a treat. Once it's enabled, then you can pretty much leave it alone, and will step climb at the correct times. And yeah, and also obviously on a long flight you've got fuel in the center tanks. Oops, that's not the right view. But the center tank pumps there switch themselves off probably when the center tank was getting empty, so all good as well. Sham2505, do you think it's FS2 crew who switches off the center tanks? I didn't know, but you see, that's because I never like do flights. I never do long flights, and therefore I never have like fuel in the center tank. So that's not something I've experienced here in the simulator before. So Yeah, Toronto to Hong Kong. There's actually a just flight video where they fly from Toronto to Hong Kong on the 777-300ER, I believe. I quite like that video because the guy's like, welcome to Air Canada and the on-time airline, and he's like, oh, we are pushing early on-time performance or something like that. And he's all like, you know, he's all happy with himself. But that's the thing, if you're flying polar like this, you're not gonna be it's kind of the polar section is kind of gonna happen kind of midway, you know, along the flight, and that's not so great. Although if you leave from maybe Toronto, you would probably get over the pole in maybe in about 4 or 5 hours, maybe 5 hours, and then you will still have another 7 hours to go to the other side. I don't know, it will need to be worked out. I don't know, we'll see. I'll look into it. I quite fancy the idea, you know. The other day I did, like, you know, the North Atlantic. Today I'm doing like this long haul flight, and I do fancy the idea of going over the pole. But yeah, we'll see if I can work out the timing so that I can let the simulation run for a while I'm sleeping, basically. Yeah, Joe 83, you're correct. The authorities are kind of a little bit concerned that, you know, we don't hand fly the aircraft anymore. But yeah, we do try to practice, you know, manual flight from time to time. On the line, we can't really disconnect the auto throttle on this aircraft. You know, they want us to keep the auto throttle engaged because flying without the auto throttle is dangerous. But we can disconnect the auto throttle, for example, in the simulator. If we are in the simulator and we want to practice a little bit, the flight director needs to stay on as well. But below 10,000 feet we can fly the aircraft manually, so yeah, sometimes we can practice as well on the line. But it's true, it's a concern. Obviously the takeoff is manual, it's not an automatic takeoff, and the landing is 99% of the time manual as well, unless we do an auto land because of the weather, of fog, but otherwise. The flight plan should come on, because actually I didn't realize I disconnected from VATSIM, and then I didn't realize that I had not reconnected, but now there should be a flight plan. Yeah, I can see a flight plan now.